Hello, this is Amy with the Hag Reads. I am back today with a vlog. I'm going to talk about the book Shutter by Courtney Alameda, which is a young adult, kind of dystopian, contemporary horror novel with a touch of romance, because I feel like anymore all YA novels must have this unrequited kind of love story as part of them. Or maybe not unrequited, but it's the forbidden love interest trope. The two characters obviously care for one another, but they can't be together because whatever the reason is. In this case, it's because he's not one of the elite families in this hunter corps of soldiers who are, I guess, kind of a weaponized private army fighting paranormal type of monsters. I guess possessions, hauntings. They have like this whole kind of classes of monsters that I'm not going to get into because it's a really nice reveal in the book in terms of, for once, it was actually kind of scary, the monsters. If you are willing to suspend your disbelief and go whole hog on this, it's actually pretty, if you think about the implications of the spirit possessions or the ghosts and the hauntings and this aggressive spiritual energy and things like that. And there are physical monsters that, it's actually fairly terrifying if you want to entertain the idea. So the whole basis of the story is it's drawn from the original Dracula by Bram Stoker. And so you get Helsing Corps, which is the private army that's fighting these, and so that draws from the original, the Van Helsing, who came to fight the vampire. So this is his, current day ancestors kind of carrying on the battle once Dracula had been destroyed, and all the other types of, evil energy type of entities that are trying to come into this world and take it over. So that was very interesting. But it's largely a YA novel, so you have adult hunters, and they're all drawn from the original families, or they're all kind of related in terms of its cousins of maybe families that are no longer like have living progeny. So you get the Helsings, Stokers. I can't now that I'm on the here talking about it, I can't remember any of the other family names. But so all of the original families, and then, some of them, what was the name of the doctor? Oh gosh. So the doctor, the doctor in the for the madhouse and all of that, his family's extinct. The American character, his family is now, extinct. But what the main family here is the Helsings, and so you have the father and then his daughter, and I'm not sure if it's like Micheline or Micheline of Helsing, and so she's the protagonist of the story. She's the main character, and she has with her, she's a teenage character. I do not remember the age. I would guess between 16 and 18, not a legal adult yet. But she's part of a team of similar aged, all boys, so she's the only girl on this team. And I guess they're near the end of their training, so they get to go out into the field and help fight some of the not quite so bad baddies, because they're not legal adults yet. But by some twist of fate, the adult team, the alpha team, is engaged in a separate battle with a different enemy, And Micheline takes it on herself to go to this hospital where on one of the upper floors an entity has basically broken through and is terrorizing the hospital. They're trying to evacuate it. There's a bunch of dead people, and they've been told not to go in until the other team arrives, but she decides to go in. She vetoes, you know, her whole other boy team, and they go with her out of loyalty, but she basically decides to put everybody's life in danger because she feels like if they wait, more people will die. So that's kind of the whole opening scene. So I don't think I'm spoiling anything. That's kind of, you know that right away. Let me take stock of my notes here. Just give me a second. So she's what's called a tetrachromat, which means she can see the spiritual energy or the, you know, the paranormal type stuff with her naked eye. And then she also uses a specialized SLR camera, you know, old school camera with film and everything. So they have a specialized lens that allows them to capture the spiritual energy of the entity, and basically she photographs it to death, which is funny when I say it like that, but actually as you're reading the story, it's of her trying to catch the spiritual energy and lessen the power of the entity. It was actually kind of scary. Like, if you could suspend your disbelief and put yourself in that position, it would have been terrifying what was going on. I didn't write down the specifics, but there's something in the structure of the eye that, so it's a genetic mutation that allows people in some of these families, and especially women, to be able to see this type of thing. So they become kind of highly specialized warriors to the cause. So it's just something outside of the range of normal human vision that they can see. And I thought that was an interesting way to deal with why everybody couldn't fight these entities, why it's a specialized group. And I did particularly like that it drew from, throughout the story, you get references to the events in the original story. So I did like that a great deal. I love the blending of the ghost hunting, which is kind of a modern day thing. Although when we say ghost hunting as normal people, we're talking about, you know, going out and trying to prove that there are ghosts or some type of energy out there. We're not fighting evil entities for, you know, our place on Earth. I like the blending of that ghost hunting aspect with the technology of the film and the flashes that capture the energy a little bit at a time. So it's not like you just take one photograph. You essentially have to photo shoot it to death. And then, let's see. So, as you get further in the story, you get kind of more complex monsters. And, you know, as I said earlier, the further you go, and if you are willing to keep your suspension of disbelief, there are actually, it's fairly, I haven't seen anything like it, I don't think, in any of my reading, that's really similar, but I like the degree to which they took it. It made it genuinely terrifying. The things I didn't like about this, so she goes into this hospital and she's fighting this entity that is clearly too powerful for her group, and what happens is a spell is cast on them, or a curse, however you want to look at it, and it's called the Soul Chain, and essentially they have a specified amount of time. I think it's a week, because isn't that, it's always 7 days. Where have we seen that before? But they essentially have a week to defeat this entity, or they're all going to die. And it's the whole group that was there. They're all affected. So the aspects of this that I didn't like, so that here they are, they've done this thing now, they're all cursed, and then the adults, the parents roll in, and they're basically taken back to the island. So they have an island retreat where they have the, their barracks and their teaching and all of that, and their housing. So they all live together on this island, separate from the coastal United States. And we find out that her father is, her mother has passed away. I think it's 3 years previous. And the father has turned to alcohol, and he's controlling. And so, yeah, here's a trope for you. Absent parents, alcohol, abuse, and anger management and control issues. Nice. Why can't any of why is it when you have this, I hate this trope of one of the parents dies, and it's usually the woman, and then the man falls apart and can't get his shit together and either completely ignores his child, and I'm thinking here of the father in that the Beautiful Creatures book series, where the wife died and he essentially just laid in bed all the time and they could hardly get him to eat. And so the son essentially was being raised by their live-in housekeeper, who provided a mother figure, but was largely left to his own devices. So here, why is it, I really dislike this. I understand loving your spouse, that they are a huge part of who you are. In these novels, it's often the man in this kind of, the female badass character or whatever. It's often the man that falls apart when when the wife passes, and then either goes to alcohol or just withdraws into themselves and refuses to acknowledge their children. And I don't feel like this is something the spouse would want. But it also happens in, say, like a novel or a movie like Practical Magic. Gosh, what's her name? I can't think. The dark-haired girl. Her name just escapes me at the moment. But she kind of has made a career out of playing women that fall apart after her husband dies. And she always has children, and she's always kind of abandoned them for at least a part of the story until another man comes along and she starts to pick herself up and get her shit together. I find this very frustrating and I know it happens in real life. I'm not discounting the effects of grief and loss, but when you have children, can you really just lay down and give up on life and leave your children, who are often too young to fend for themselves, to just fend for themselves? And in this case, not only is he kind of controlling what she can do because of who she is, she's got this love interest with an orphaned boy who was kind of adopted by the family and has been raised and trained as a warrior, but she's not allowed to have feelings for him, nor him for her. It's expressly forbidden. The father has basically said she has to marry into one of the other families to keep the family line going. So it will be an arranged marriage with a suitable family, whether she loves the boy or not. So that's essentially what's going to happen. And so I can't get behind that either. Like, that's archaic and not healthy at all emotionally. But that he would say those things flat out to her and make them as broad statements, and that all of the family seem to be accepting of this, that that's what they have to do to keep these family lines going. I'm kind of torn between, I do understand grief and loss, certainly, but to the point at which you become an alcoholic and you abuse your own children because you can't accept the loss of your spouse. And in this case, it's because he blames his daughter for his wife's death. And so you get the backstory with that later on. But it's just, okay, then you need to remove yourself from the equation and place her with responsible caregivers, not become an abusive, controlling asshole who drinks too much and is also physically abusive. So that is a big no-no. And then, it always seems to be downplayed in this, where it's acknowledged, but nobody really does anything. So they just let the abuse go on. This is a man who clearly shouldn't have been in control of an organization if he couldn't keep his personal life together. So that was the downside for me. And there are other tropey things. You know, she's the only girl. So here's this badass, supposedly badass heroine who's capable of defending herself and defeating these monsters, who is constantly making bad, rash decisions, is withholding information from her posse, you know, rushes into things too soon, you know, and is in constant need of rescue. So how is she and that's another trope I don't like, the badass heroine that is in fact not in the least badass. So but I did like this story despite these specific things that I'm talking about that I find frustrating as tropes. You know, they detract from the story. And I'm so over forbidden love, like, and this is the type of story I think that there could have been hints of a romance between them, or, you know, that they acknowledge that they have feelings, but it's a major component of the story, and this is the type of story that I don't feel really needs a romantic. It would have been, I think, a fine story on its own, sans romance, at least the, oh my god, you're the only one for me type of love, like, I can't live without you. That kind of love bothers me, especially in young people, because, you know, you have those feelings as a teen, like, that everything is so immediate and soul-crushing, and if you can't, you know, you're gonna die if you can't be with this person, and it's so not true, because you grow up, and most high school and college romances don't last, because you're changing so much between, let's say, 16 and 25 or 26. Core elements of your personality will still be there, but your interest and your knowledge and your life experience and the things that you like to do change so broadly over that period of time that romances from high school and college often do not last beyond that. I mean, obviously there are real life and fictional examples of ones that do stand the test of time, but for the most part, both persons are changing so much that you get to a point where you're like, you're not who I thought you were. Well, no, neither one of you are who you thought you were, because you've been growing the whole time. So from that aspect, I kind of cringe a little bit in every YA novel that I read that has this romance component where they're meant to be together forever and ever, and that this is a decision they can make at 15, 16, 17 and know that it's going to last forever, and so that makes it okay for them to have sex, to lie to their parents, to sneak around. And here I'm thinking of the White Rabbit Chronicles, where, you know, well, it's an Alice in Wonderland retelling that has the absent father once again. The girl, the Alice character, falls in love with one of the hunters, and so he kind of puts her off with sex because he's already had sex, and he kind of wants her to wait. But once they acknowledge their, you know, their true and ultimate love, they become sexually active, and I don't know that that's the right message. I don't think there's anything wrong with teens having sex as long as they're protected, but I think that that's the wrong message to send out to girls, is that as long as you found the one, it's okay. I think it sends out the wrong message. There's nothing wrong with healthy sexuality, but perpetuating this idea in fiction that there is a one, when in fact you may find there are many ones in your life, depending on, you know, your personal development. But to suggest that once you and this boy have agreed that you're the one for each other, that it's okay then to lie to your parents and start sneaking around and to sneak boys into your room to sleep or have sex with them, that idea is uncomfortable for me. I would love to see more YA novels that are about friendships and I guess community, in the sense of a youth community, you know, where they are supportive and friends with one another, But especially in like the White Rabbit Chronicles, there was this real girl on girl hate aspect to it over this particular boy. And, you know, that's true to life. That does happen between women and teenage girls. But I'd like to see more where the girls are actually strong characters. They're not reliant on becoming attached to a boy. Because I have seen it done where there's a friendship aspect more than there is this I want to hop into the sack with you aspect. And then the girl on girl, you know, non-supportive female relationships where if there's... Ladies, there are enough men out there that you don't need to fight each other over one guy. It's never worth it. If you have to fight for him, then he was never yours to begin with. So, and that is the truth. Because if he's that wishy-washy, then he just kind of maybe wants to get laid, or he doesn't know his true mind, and why are you fighting with each other over a guy who can't choose, you know, and stay loyal to whichever girl it is. And if a guy has left you for another girl abruptly, why would you even want him back? So those are my thoughts on that. And that's probably not politically correct thinking. If you don't agree with me, that is fine, and you're welcome to post and comment about it. If you do the same, I'd like to, you know, eventually engage in more dialogue on this channel if I get more subscribers. But that's just how kind of I feel about young adult fiction right now. Like, I really like this book. I gave it 4 stars. But there are some aspects of it that very much frustrate me. Why can't she be a badass heroine without having to be this guy and without having to make really bad decisions that turn her into a damsel in distress where this boy has to come and save her? Why does it need to be like that? Why can't she just be the badass heroine and they work collectively together to make something happen? So that's my thoughts here. I did in fact give this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I loved the weaving of the original Dracula novel into the present day. I liked the technology that they were using. I liked the way that they had this kind of layers of monsters, levels, I guess, from the weakest spiritual energy to these kind of really gruesome, you know, disturbingly, I guess, almost zombie-like monsters. Well done in that respect. It just a little bit of a peel away with me for these other elements. And I understand why they're used in YA. I really do. You know, because otherwise what responsible adult would let a teenager go out into the world to fight monsters and put their life at risk? Well, you wouldn't, because that would be your child and you would protect them as much as you could. So I do understand the need for some peeling back of parental responsibility to allow these characters to go out and be the heroine or the hero of the story. But this particular trope with the absent parent, alcoholic, you know, boo-hoo, poor me, I lost my wife, let me turn into a raging asshole kind of thing, really bothers me. And that's all I have to say today. Thank you if you have watched all the way to the end. I will see you tomorrow for another video, and happy whatever time of day it is. Bye!